Picture this. You're at a networking event. You know the type. Everyone's got their fake smiles plastered on, business cards ready like weapons. The person next to you just asked, "So, what do you do?" For the third time tonight, because they weren't listening the first two times, they're too busy scanning the room for someone more valuable to talk to. And there you are, standing in the middle of this circus, feeling like you're drowning in a sea of inauthenticity. If this sounds familiar, if you've ever felt like modern social life is slowly crushing your soul, then something's happening to you that most people don't understand. Something that society doesn't want to admit exists. But here's what nobody talks about. Why does modern social interaction feel like psychological torture for certain people? Why do some folks thrive in crowds while others feel like they're suffocating? The answer isn't what you think it is. Let me tell you something that'll make your skin crawl. Most social interactions today are complete theater, pure performance art, and everyone knows it, but nobody wants to admit it. Think about your last networking experience. Remember that person who was super interested in someone's story until they realized that person couldn't help their career? Watch how fast their enthusiasm died. It's like watching someone's battery drain in real time. This is the great social deception. Most interactions today are completely transactional. Pure business disguised as friendship. And everyone knows it. People have turned human connection into a marketplace. Everyone's constantly calculating, what can this person do for me? Are they worth my time? Can they help me get ahead? It's not connection, it's social capitalism. Arthur Schopenhauer saw through this centuries ago when he observed how people fear genuine solitude because it forces them to face who they really are without their social masks. But what happens when you're someone who actually enjoys your own company? What happens when silence doesn't scare you? When it energizes you? You become the weirdo at the party. Here's where things get twisted. Modern life has turned noise into a religion. Your phone buzzes every 30 seconds. Slack notifications, Instagram likes, text messages that say, "Hey," and nothing else. Everyone's addicted to the ping, the buzz, the constant digital cocaine hit. But for the rare minds, the ones who need space to think, to process, to actually be, this constant noise feels like torture. It's like trying to read a book while someone's playing death metal at full volume in your ear. You know what the funny part is? People act like you're the problem when you don't want to join their noise addiction. They'll say things like, "You're antisocial," or "You need to get out more." No, maybe they need to shut up more. The rare thinker craves what the masses fear most: silence, depth, and a real conversation that goes beyond what someone had for lunch or what they watched on Netflix last night. But modern society has weaponized shallow interaction. Small talk isn't just encouraged, it's mandatory. Try skipping it and watch how uncomfortable everyone gets. "The weather's nice today, huh?" No, the weather is weather. Can we talk about something that actually matters? Let's get real about modern friendships for a second, because most of them are straight up transactional. People collect friends like Pokemon cards now. It's all about what you can do for them. Your value as a human being gets reduced to your Instagram followers, your job title, or how many connections you can provide. I've seen people ghost lifelong friends at the moment they couldn't offer career benefits anymore. I've watched best friends turn into strangers because one person got a promotion and suddenly became too busy for the friendship. Søren Kierkegaard, another philosopher who saw through society's facade, had a saying, "The crowd is untruth." He understood that when people get together in groups, they often abandon their authentic selves and become something fake. And that's exactly what's happening today. Your friends love you when you're useful. They celebrate your wins when it makes them look good by association. But the moment you're struggling, the moment you need real support, watch how fast they disappear. For the rare individual who values authentic connection over transactional relationships, this feels like betrayal on steroids, because they actually mean it when they say they care about someone. They're not keeping score. They're not networking. They're trying to build something real. But real doesn't sell. Real doesn't get likes. Real doesn't fit into the modern social game, so they retreat. Not because they hate people, but because they love authenticity more than they love being liked. Here's something that'll make you question everything. Most people are performing constantly. Think about it. At work, they put on their professional face. On social media, they curate their best life. With friends, they downplay their problems so they don't seem like a downer. Even with family, they hide parts of themselves to avoid drama. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this better than anyone. Every profound spirit needs a mask. But he wasn't celebrating masks. He was pointing out how exhausting it is to wear them. Modern life has turned everyone into method actors. We're all playing characters instead of being ourselves. And the crazy part? We've been doing it so long that some people have forgotten who they actually are underneath the performance. But what happens when you're someone who hates wearing masks? What happens when authenticity isn't just a preference for you? It's a necessity. You become the person everyone calls too intense or too real. I've watched people get uncomfortable when someone shares genuine emotions, real struggles, or actual thoughts that go deeper than the surface level. Whoa, that's heavy, they'll say. Or my personal favorite, let's keep things light. Keep things light? Life isn't light. Life is messy and complicated and sometimes painful. Pretending otherwise doesn't make it go away. It just makes you fake. For the rare individual who can't stomach the constant performance, every social interaction becomes exhausting. It's like being forced to speak a foreign language all day, every day. Want to see something terrifying? Watch what happens when a group of people decide something is true. It doesn't matter if it's actually true. It doesn't matter if there's evidence against it. Once the group consensus forms, individual thinking gets thrown out the window. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who had to deal with plenty of group stupidity, wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." But try telling that to a mob on social media. Try being the one person in a meeting who questions the group's brilliant idea. Try having an unpopular opinion based on actual facts. You'll get labeled as difficult, negative, not a team player. The truth is, most people would rather be wrong together than right alone. It's safer. It's easier. It requires zero independent thinking. But for the rare minds who can't turn off their critical thinking, who can't just go along to get along, this groupthink pressure feels like intellectual suffocation. They're forced to either compromise their integrity or become social outcasts. And guess what? Most people choose to compromise. Social media didn't create comparison, it weaponized it. Now everyone's life is on display 24/7. The vacation photos, the promotion announcements, the perfect relationships, the designer clothes, the expensive restaurants. And most people eat it up like candy. They scroll through Instagram feeling either inadequate or superior, depending on who they're comparing themselves to. Nietzsche warned about this centuries ago. He called it slave morality, building your self-worth by comparing yourself to others instead of developing your own values. But here's what's really sick about modern comparison culture. Most of it is fake anyway. That person posting about their amazing life, they're probably miserable. That couple with the perfect relationship photos, they fought for 3 hours before taking that selfie. That successful influencer, they're drowning in debt but can't admit it because their brand depends on looking successful. It's all theater. Status theater. And the rare individuals who see through this game, who refuse to play, they're forced to watch everyone else chase fake achievements and artificial validation. It's like being the only sober person at a party full of drunk people. You see how ridiculous everyone's acting, but they're all having too much fun to listen to reason. Here's the most twisted part of modern social life. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You've been there, right? At a party where everyone's laughing and chatting, but you feel like you're watching through glass. At a work meeting where everyone's engaged, but you feel invisible. In a friend group where everyone's talking, but nobody's saying anything real. Fyodor Dostoevsky understood this psychological hell. Man is sometimes extraordinarily passionately in love with suffering. He knew that sometimes the pain of fake connection hurts worse than honest isolation. Because at least when you're alone, you're not pretending, you're not performing, you're not trying to fit into conversations that feel meaningless. The rare thinker would rather be genuinely alone than fake connected in a crowd. But society doesn't understand this. Society sees someone eating lunch alone and thinks, poor person, they need friends. They see someone skipping the office party and think they're unsocial. Number. Maybe they just prefer quality over quantity. Maybe they'd rather have one real conversation than 50 shallow ones. Maybe they understand that true connection requires vulnerability, depth, and authenticity, things that are in short supply at most social gatherings. Want to commit social suicide? Tell someone they're actually struggling, not Instagram struggling, where they post a motivational quote about overcoming challenges. Real struggling. The kind where they don't have answers. The kind where life genuinely sucks right now and they don't know how to fix it. Watch how fast people run. Just think positive and they'll say, everything happens for a reason. Focus on gratitude. At least it's not worse. This is toxic positivity. The idea that all negative emotions are character flaws that need to be fixed immediately. It's the belief that sadness, anger, frustration, or despair are somehow moral failures. Modern culture has turned happiness into a performance requirement. People aren't allowed to be genuinely down without someone trying to fix them with motivational memes and shallow advice. Arthur Schopenhauer understood that life is more suffering than joy, that pain is inevitable, and that pretending otherwise doesn't make it disappear. It just makes people delusional and unprepared for reality. But try explaining that at a dinner party. Try saying that sometimes life is hard and that's okay. Try suggesting that maybe we should sit with difficult emotions instead of immediately trying to escape them. Watch the discomfort spread across the room like a virus. That's so negative, they'll whisper. They're bringing down the whole vibe. No, they're being honest about the human experience. Everyone else is living in fantasy land. Here's what toxic positivity really is. It's emotional laziness. It's easier to tell someone to cheer up than to actually listen to their problems. It's simpler to share a motivational quote than to sit with someone in their pain. It's also control disguised as caring. When people demand that others be positive, they're really saying, your authentic emotions make me uncomfortable, so change them for my benefit. For the rare individual who understands that all emotions are part of the human experience, this forced positivity feels like oppression. They're not allowed to process their pain honestly. They're not allowed to acknowledge that life is sometimes genuinely difficult. They're forced to put on a happy face and pretend everything's fine, even when it's not. It's psychological torture disguised as caring. It's gaslighting wrapped in rainbow colors and inspirational fonts. And the worst part, the people pushing toxic positivity think they're helping. They genuinely believe they're spreading good vibes and making the world better, but they're actually making it worse. They're teaching people to suppress authentic emotions. They're creating a culture where vulnerability is seen as weakness and honesty is seen as negativity. They're building a world where people have to perform happiness instead of actually experiencing it. Here's the real psychological hell that nobody talks about: the existential trap. Picture this. Someone who's too awake to live blindly, but gets punished by society for trying to live authentically. They're stuck in a no man's land between two impossible choices. If they try to adjust to society, to play the game, follow the rules, engage in the shallow talk, they suffocate. Every fake smile feels like swallowing poison. Every meaningless conversation chips away at their soul. Every social gathering becomes a performance that exhausts them to their core. But if they withdraw completely, if they say screw it and step back from the madness, society doesn't just let them be. Oh no, they face isolation, alienation, and mockery from the very people they're trying to escape. They're such a loner, people whisper, always making excuses to avoid hanging out. I heard they don't even have Instagram. The withdrawal isn't met with understanding. It's met with judgment, rejection, and social punishment. This is what Søren Kierkegaard called the sickness unto death, being trapped between two worlds and belonging fully to neither. Think about it. They're too conscious to enjoy the blissful ignorance that makes most social situations bearable for others. They see through the mask, the performance, the shallow connections. They can't unsee what they've seen or unknow what they know. But when they try to step away from what feels toxic to them, society doesn't respect their choice. Instead, it punishes them for it. They're labeled as weird, difficult, antisocial, as if choosing authenticity over performance is some kind of character defect. So they're stuck in this torturous middle ground, too aware to fit in, but mocked and alienated when they opt out. This creates what psychology calls existential loneliness. It's not loneliness from being alone. It's loneliness from being fundamentally misunderstood by the society that rejects their authentic choice to live differently. They're looking for depth in a shallow world, authenticity in a performance-based culture, truth in a society built on comfortable lies. And when they can't find it and they choose to step back, they're punished for that choice. Regular lonely people can usually solve their problem by finding more social interaction. But existentially lonely people face mockery whether they engage with the shallow system or withdraw from it. They're damned if they participate, damned if they don't. Caught between two forms of social rejection with no clear way out. And here's the really twisted part. They often blame themselves for this impossible situation. Maybe I'm too picky, they think. Maybe I should just lower my standards and enjoy small talk like everyone else. But they can't. They've tasted real connection, real conversation, real authenticity, and now everything else feels like cardboard. So they live in this constant state of internal conflict, desperately wanting to connect with others, but finding most attempts at connection hollow and draining. And when they try to protect themselves by withdrawing, they face social punishment for that choice too. This is why it's psychological torture. There's no escape that doesn't come with a massive cost. To live shallowly feels like betraying their authentic self. To live apart means facing society's judgment, mockery, and alienation for choosing authenticity over conformity. They're not too human to stay out. They're too human to ignore society's punishment when they do. Here's something nobody wants to admit. Most social anxiety isn't actually anxiety. It's intelligence. Your brain is picking up on all the fake signals, all the performative behavior, all the transactional relationships, all the meaningless small talk, and it's saying, this doesn't feel right. That's not anxiety, that's accurate social perception. The rare individual who feels drained after social events isn't broken. They're not missing some social gene. They're just more sensitive to inauthenticity than the average person. They can smell it from a mile away. And most social situations are full of it. So their brain does what any intelligent system would do when encountering toxicity. It tries to protect them by making them want to leave. But instead of honoring this wisdom, society labels it as a disorder that needs treatment. You need to be more social, they say. You need to put yourself out there more. No, maybe everyone else needs to be more authentic. Here's what the rare ones figure out eventually. Solitude isn't punishment, it's freedom. When you stop trying to fit into social situations that drain your soul, when you stop performing for people who don't really see you, when you stop pretending to enjoy conversations that feel meaningless, that's when you discover who you actually are. Solitude becomes a rebellion against a society that demands constant performance. Authenticity becomes an act of revolution in a world built on fake connections. The rare individual learns to treasure their alone time because it's the only time they can be completely real. No masks, no performance, no pretending. Just them, their thoughts, and the freedom to exist without explanation. And you know what? That's not sad. That's not lonely. That's not antisocial. That's liberation. But let's be honest about the cost. Choosing authenticity over popularity comes with a price. You'll have fewer friends. You'll get invited to fewer parties. You'll be labeled as difficult or too intense by people who prefer surface-level interactions. Your refusal to play the social game will be seen as judgment by people who are deeply invested in that game. Some people will take your authenticity as a personal attack on their lifestyle choices. Your comfort with solitude will make their fear of being alone more obvious. Your preference for deep conversation will highlight how shallow their relationships are, and they'll resent you for it. But here's what the rare ones understand. Losing fake friends isn't actually losing anything. Being excluded from meaningless social events isn't missing out. Being seen as too much by people who are content with too little isn't a character flaw. It's just the natural consequence of refusing to compromise your soul for social acceptance. Here's something beautiful that's happening. There are more rare ones than you think. They're just hidden, scattered, pretending to fit in while secretly craving something deeper. Social media makes it look like everyone loves the constant noise and shallow connection. But that's because the people who hate it aren't posting about it. They're not building their brand around being authentic. They're just quietly living authentic lives. They're the ones who prefer books to parties, deep conversations to small talk, and quality time alone to quality time with people who don't really know them. They're the ones who see through the performance, but haven't found others who share their perspective. If you're reading this and nodding along, if you've ever felt like you're the only one who sees how fake modern social life has become, you're not alone. You're just part of a different tribe. A tribe that values substance over style, truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance. And that tribe is growing. So what do you do when you realize you're one of the rare ones? When you understand that modern social life feels like psychological torture because you're wired differently? First, stop apologizing for who you are. Your need for solitude isn't antisocial. Your craving for depth isn't asking too much. Your inability to enjoy shallow conversation isn't a character flaw. It's just how you're built. Second, find your tribe. They exist. They're just not at the networking events and office parties. They're not posting inspirational quotes on LinkedIn or building personal brands on Instagram. They're in bookstores and coffee shops. They're taking long walks alone. They're having late-night conversations with the few people who actually get them. They're the ones who would rather have one real friend than 50 fake ones. Third, protect your energy. You don't owe anyone your presence at events that drain you. You don't have to explain why you prefer smaller gatherings. You don't need to justify your social choices to people who think differently. Your energy is precious. Guard it like the rare resource it is. Fourth, be the change you want to see. When you do engage socially, bring your authentic self. Ask real questions. Share genuine thoughts. Create the kind of conversation you wish existed more often. You might be surprised how many people are hungry for something real. Modern social life feels like psychological torture for rare people because it is psychological torture. It's a system designed for quantity over quality, performance over authenticity, and noise over depth. And if that system doesn't work for someone, if it makes them feel like they're slowly dying inside, that doesn't mean they're broken. It means they're awake. But here's the deeper tragedy that cuts to the bone. The real torture isn't just society's rejection. It's the inner exile that comes with consciousness. The deep thinker's curse is being caught in an impossible triangle, too awake for the herd. They can't unsee the masks, the performance, the shallow connections. They can't unknow what they know about how fake most social interaction really is. The blissful ignorance that makes small talk bearable for others, they've lost access to it forever. Too human for complete detachment. Despite seeing through society's facade, they still crave connection. They still need to be understood. They still want to share their thoughts with someone who gets it. The hermit's path isn't an escape. It's just a different kind of prison. Caught in a no man's land where every path is painful. Fitting in requires betraying their authentic self. Withdrawing completely means accepting isolation. There's no choice that doesn't come with suffering. This is the existential torture that society doesn't want to acknowledge. Some people are built in a way that makes them incompatible with the modern social game. Not broken, not antisocial, just different. And that difference comes with a price that never stops being paid. But here's what the rare ones eventually learn. The question isn't how to fix themselves to fit into a toxic system. The question is how to build a life that honors who they actually are, even when that life looks nothing like what society expects. Because at the end of the day, the rare ones aren't the problem with modern society. They're the solution. They're the ones who refuse to accept fake as normal, who insist that depth is possible, who prove that authenticity is still alive, even when it's not popular. So if someone is reading this and recognizing themselves in every word, if they've ever felt like an alien in their own social circle, they need to remember this. They're not too much. Everyone else is too little. They're not asking for too much. Others are offering too little. They're not the problem. They're the answer. And the world needs more people like them, not fewer. The tragedy is real. The exile is real. The torture is real. But so is their power to create something better. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the fakest social situation you've ever been forced to endure? I want to hear stories of surviving in a world that rewards performance over authenticity. Until next time, stay real, stay rare.